If you've been preparing for the MMI, hopefully you know that you should be practicing with realistic, timed simulations, getting expert feedback, reviewing sample questions and expert answers so that you can get a feel for the MMI itself, its structure, and the kinds of things that you might be asked. Today, though, I want to give you 5 things to keep in mind when you're in the interview room itself. Before I get into that, hi, my name is Dr. Sarah Klebe and I'm an admissions expert at BeMo. If you'd like our help preparing for your MMI, just go to BeMoMMI.com and we'll get you connected with one of our admissions experts to get you started on your preparations. Now, on to those MMI tips. So, tips for when you're in the interview room. First and foremost, this is the easiest and probably also the most difficult tip, if you want to call it that. Relax. Relax. The examiners, the interviewers, the people who are evaluating you, they want to see you at ease so that they can see you, your authentic self, or at least your authentic representation of your best self, your most professional self. I have been an educator for a long time, and I remember all too well what it's like to be a student, graduate and undergraduate, and I know that a lot of students enter examination type spaces, whether it's giving a presentation in front of the class, doing an exam, doing an interview. They go into these kinds of experiences anticipating an audience that wants to see them mess up, thinking that the people to whom they're presenting are looking for them to fail, are looking for errors. And obviously, when you're being evaluated, yeah, people are going to be keeping an eye out for that sort of thing. But whether we're talking about the academic context with your professors and your educators, or whether we're talking about the MMI, I want to get you to look at it a different way, because your audience wants to see you succeed. They want to see you do well. No one goes to a presentation to watch the presenter crash and burn, at least not intentionally. Everyone goes because they want to hear someone talk about interesting ideas, present fascinating findings, demonstrate things about which they are passionate. And the MMI isn't any different from that. No one wants this to be stressful. You don't want it to be stressful. It's inherently stressful. It's going to be a little stressful, and a little stress is a good thing. It keeps us on our toes. But your interviewer doesn't want to see you so stressed that you're freezing up or that you're not able to articulate your ideas effectively. They're not there to watch you fail. They're there because they want to have an interesting conversation with you and learn more about who you are. They want to see you at your very best so they can give you a fair evaluation. So I tell students this all the time, whether in my capacity as an educator or in sort of a mentor capacity. Your audience really does want to see you succeed. They really do want to see you do well. And going with that mindset is, well, it can be quite liberating. It helps you look at the situation a bit differently in ways that help you manage your stress more effectively and present your best self more effectively. So remember, if you've gotten to the MMI, at least with the way things are structured right now in terms of who gets MMI interviews, you've already made it through one round of vetting. They've already looked at you and your application materials in some capacity and decided to invite you here to do this, right? MMIs are big productions. There are lots of moving parts, lots of people who have to come in, spend their time, be compensated. There's resources, all of these things that have been put together in part to see you and to see how you do in these scenarios and to see who you are and what you choose to do with the prompts that you're given. So they're not necessarily looking for reasons to strike you off the list of candidates. They're also looking for reasons to keep you. And that's awesome, right? That's great. That's a beautiful thing. So, mindset is a lot when it comes to, going through any situational judgment test, and especially the MMI when you're face to face with another person under an immense amount of pressure and all of that. So that is always my first tip, is to assume that your audience wants you to do well, because that helps you approach it with a different mindset than is, I think, a little more common. So, tip number 2, moving along. Demonstrate thoughtfulness. That is to say, you're under a lot of time pressure in the MMI, obviously. The clock is ticking down. You only have so much time to give your answer. But, take your time to say a few things of substance before just rushing into a topic, or just, giving your evaluation of the situation straight away. Take a second to think about the prompt that you've been given, the scenario in which you've been put, the idea that's been presented to you. You don't want to go in and just start talking for the sake of buying time to come up with something more substantial to say. That comes off as just sort of rambling and chaotic. That doesn't come off as thoughtful. So, when you get in the room, take a second, take a deep breath, smile, remember they want to see you do well, and approach the situation thoughtfully, not in a rushed way. Hopefully, again, by this point, you have looked into sample questions and expert answers. You've done practice. You've gone through some of those sample questions and answered them yourselves. You have strategies for different question types. You've been practicing and you've been reading. So you have a general idea of how to approach the situation. So let them see that reflectiveness and that thoughtfulness in action. Number 3, and this is, almost regardless of the scenario or the situation, this is always a good tip: show empathy. Right? One of the things that we really encourage students to do, especially in scenarios, is to identify whatever the most pressing issue in the scenario is. And the most pressing issue is almost always the person in your care, the most vulnerable party in the situation, the person who could potentially be harmed or neglected in some way, depending on the action taken. And so thinking empathetically through what this would be like from that individual's perspective, or even from that group's perspective, that can go a long way. So if you're in a situation where you're in that kind of relationship with another person, situate your actions, your positions, your perspectives, and your thinking from that perspective. If I was in their shoes, what would this be like? This demonstrates your ability to adapt at the intellectual level, right? To think from multiple perspectives. That multiple perspective taking is a key aspect of demonstrating intellectual adaptability, but also your adaptability at the level of sort of humane situational awareness. Understanding, at least to some extent, when someone is going through something that might be painful or upsetting or devastating, depending on the scenario itself. And almost regardless of the profession that you're going into, that is something that you are going to have to do all the time. In medicine and medical related fields like nursing, absolutely. But also if you are trying to become a lawyer, considering the perspectives of your clients is incredibly important. If you're hoping to go into scholarship and teaching, thinking from the perspective of your learners, incredibly important. Any career where you serve others or you have others relying on you for advice, for guidance, and for instruction is going to require a measure of empathy. And that empathetic response, that compassion, that capability is an absolutely key quality in most professions that use the MMI. So they are looking for people who have that ability to take on perspectives other than their own, and to consider the situation, the scenario, the information, whatever, from those other perspectives. Tip number 4. Again, hopefully part of your preparation has been looking into the ethics of the field you are pursuing. That's critical. There are so many ethical dilemmas in MMI scenarios. So make sure that you take time to display that ethical acumen that you've been developing and refining over time. Make sure you know the ethical principles for controversial issues in your field. If you're an aspiring medical student, for example, you want to read the foundational text Doing Right by Philip Herbert, which we recommend to students all the time. Be prepared to draw upon the ideas there in framing your responses, even if they're not necessarily medical scenarios. The ethical ideas and impulses that are demonstrated in those ethical texts are often widely applicable and translatable to multiple various contexts. Whatever your discipline is, there are almost always ethical standards to the profession. So make sure that you've familiarized yourself with those and with some of the tensions and controversies that exist in your field prior to the MMI interview. That doesn't mean that you have to memorize these, whether it's a book like Doing Right or an actual code of conduct of some kind. You don't have to memorize the ethical code, know it inside and out, or anything like that. They know you're not a practicing professional yet, and you're going to learn those things in detail as you go. But you do need to show that you understand the kinds of ethical responsibilities that you'll be expected to take on once you are a practicing professional in the field. And you also want to demonstrate that you're willing to invest yourself, even at this early stage, to beginning that process of understanding and internalizing those ethical principles. So take the time to refine that, and don't forget to display it when you're in the room, because again, along with empathy is that sense of ethics in terms of something that really permeates a lot of different types of MMI stations and questions. And often the two are quite related. Ethical situations often require us to take on multiple perspectives, which means asking the question, what does this look like, feel like, how is this experienced by someone who isn't me? And then finally, MMI tip number 5 that I want to give you when you're in the room, don't force a story from your own life into your answer, but if there is a story from your own life that's applicable, you can tell that story. So there will be a lot of MMI scenarios where you do not see any direct parallel between what's given to you and your own life. You may have never experienced anything like it, and that's totally fine, because you'll be prepared, you'll have looked at those kinds of questions, and you'll know how to respond to them effectively. If you're given a prompt asking you to reflect on questions of end-of-life care or palliative care, don't try to worm in a story about your time playing volleyball or something like that. It's fine to have some set anecdotes in mind that represent key pivotal moments of your life, but don't jam them in where they don't fit, because that's going to be obviously not a good fit and seem inappropriate. But if there's a story that aligns, then by all means connect it. If you are an aspiring medical student and you shadowed a doctor who specialized in end-of-life palliative care, and you witnessed a particularly meaningful interaction that would make sense in the context of the question that you're asked about end-of-life or palliative care, then by all means you can certainly draw on that. That's totally fine. If you're given a question about handling conflict, and you have had particular situations in your life where you had to effectively handle conflict, and that informs your process and your perspective in resolving conflict, by all means, go ahead and talk about that. You don't necessarily need to make that the focal point of your answer. You can reason your way through and then sort of at the end give the anecdote, or do what feels naturally to you. Do what feels natural to you. All of that's fine. But just, don't use the stories simply because you have them. If they don't fit, they don't fit. If you never get to use them, then you never get to use them, but at least you are prepared just in case. But if there is an alignment between what's happening in the scenario, or even sort of the spirit of what's happening in the scenario, and something from your own life that you think makes a valuable contribution to your reflection on the answer and your overall presentation of self, then by all means, you can draw on that, and that's absolutely fine. So I hope that you enjoyed this video and that these tips were helpful. If so, please do go ahead, like it, share it with a friend who might benefit from it. Be sure to follow us on whatever social media platform you're on right now. If you'd like us to help you prepare for your MMI, you can go to BeMoMMI.com, or you can click on the link that appears either above or below this video to schedule your free initial consultation. We'll set you up with one of our admissions experts to answer any questions you might have and get you started with your preparations. We have programs to suit any of your needs, and we're always happy to work with you to determine which plan is going to support you and your goals most effectively. As ever, thank you so very much for your time. Take good care, and I'll see you next time.